What is going on, guys, and welcome back to Touchdowns to Home Runs. My name is Bernie. Thank you for joining us today on the Touchdowns to Home Runs show. Hope that your day is going absolutely fantastic. The NBA preseason is just about a month away now, and after a pretty busy offseason, the Raptors seem to be done making moves, and the roster looks ready to go. So today we'll be breaking down the major moves that the Raptors made this offseason, assigning a letter grade to each one, and really trying to determine how well the front office actually did over the course of this offseason. Just before we do get into the video, though, as always, guys, if you do enjoy what you see today, please make sure to do me a huge favor, smash that thumbs up button, subscribe to Touchdowns to Home Runs for more content just like this. I want to get it started with probably the second biggest move of the offseason, I would say, behind the Lowry sign and trade, which is drafting Scottie Barnes in the NBA draft, and I would assign this a letter grade of A. I don't think I'm ever going to forget my reaction right when I found out that the Raptors had taken Scottie Barnes over Jalen Suggs with the number 4 pick, but I think a lot of that just came from shock and from seeing draft boards, which literally every single one had Jalen Suggs at number 4. The initial concern, though, didn't come without reason, with the uncertainty of Lowry and the positional sort of jumble with OG Anunoby at the 3 and Pascal Siakam at the 4. You know, you wonder sort of where Scottie Barnes would fit in. But I think the more that I started to research and look at this move and this draft pick, the more that I really started to like it. And the more that I realized, that Scottie Barnes might not necessarily be the most NBA-ready draft prospect, but I do think the Raptors found an absolute gem in Scottie Barnes. In his first look in the Summer League, Scottie Barnes showed exactly what I saw from him in college, which is a freakishly athletic player, somebody who affects the game in multiple ways, is great defensively, plays with a ton of effort, and even showed improvements in terms of his spot-up shooting motion. I really like this draft pick. I think the Raptors did a really nice job, and I think it definitely helps that Scottie Barnes, A, fits into the Raptors scheme of lengthy, two-way defensive players, but also, from everything that I've seen, seems like Scottie Barnes wants to be in Toronto as well. I think it's a perfect fit. Second up, Khem Birch, the re-signing of Khem Birch in Toronto. I'm going to grade it a B. This was a fairly easy decision for me. I think it's a good move, but one that for the most part was expected. Khem Birch for the Raptors, somebody who definitely fits their mold in terms of being another two-way player, a solid big man who did a solid job for the Raptors when really they lacked a ton of depth at that 5 position. In 19 games with Toronto, 11.9 points per game, 7.6 rebounds, 1.9 assists, 1.2 blocks. Another good thing about Birch, high energy player, plays with a lot of effort. Again, I think he looks like he really does want to be in Toronto, and I think that a 3-year, $20 million deal definitely within the Raptors budget. One of the reasons I didn't grade this move higher, though, is because I think coming into the offseason, everybody knew that the 5 position for the Raptors was their weakest position. So part of me thought maybe the Raptors go in, you take a look at a guy like Nerlens Noel, maybe a guy like Jared Allen, a few other guys, maybe take a shot in the NBA draft. So I was hoping that the Raptors had another center so you could push Khem Birch over to the bench. But I think in terms of Khem Birch, definitely wanted him back. Another good move. Next up, Trent Jr., also the re-signing of him. I'm going to grade it a B again. I think another move that is not a bad one by any means, but it's one that is definitely expected and was expected coming into the Raptors offseason. $17 million a year, which they paid Trent Jr. I think a little bit of an overpay, but coming into the offseason contract talks, they thought it would be between $15 and $20 million. So, I mean, it is on the lower end of that. And I just think that he's such a good player to fit the Raptors transition era, especially in terms of guards, and a very interesting player overall with a mega high ceiling and a real shot at having a breakout season this year. 17 games at Toronto last season, 6.2 points per game, 3.6 rebounds, 35.5% from 3. In addition to that, also gives the Raptors a lot of size at the 2 position and still only 22 years old. And you traded him you traded for him last year. I think it definitely makes sense to bring him back. The only thing that I do worry about Trent Jr., the lack of defense, maybe need for the ball as well. He did take quite a number of the Raptors shots last year, but with no Lowry, the offense is going to need to go somewhere. So I think Trent definitely works into sort of what the Raptors are trying to do, especially offensively. Number 4, acquisitions of Achua, Dragic, of course, in that Lowry sign and trade. I'm going to give it another B. I want to start off with Precious Achiuwa first because I think, he is the main part of the trade. We'll get to Dragic in just a second, but I think, obviously the main part that you get him is just for the money, the contract matching part. But I think the goal of the trade was pretty clear. The Raptors could no longer move forward with Kyle Lowry. You wanted to get as much young talent as you possibly could. That ended up being Precious Achiuwa, who I think is honestly a little bit underrated. He still was the 20th overall pick in the NBA draft only a year ago, and he's a very good athlete, somebody who hustles on the glass, can block shots. He's another good two-way piece, meaning he fits right into the Raptors scheme, and I genuinely think he's going to be a solid center option, not only this year off the bench, but a real solid option for the Raptors, a few years down the line as well. On the flip side of that, Dragic, now I said before, there's a clear understanding of why Dragic had to be in the trade, which was to match the money in that large contract of Kyle Lowry and make that work in terms of all the money. I don't expect Dragic to be a Raptor for very long, though. He's got an expiring contract at the end of the year, but even with that being said, I expect him hopefully to have some production for the Raptors in the season and then be moved to a contender somewhere before or near the deadline, so at least you get something back in return for him. Until then, though, I think Dragic still has a role to play in this Raptors rotation. I think he's going to be the backup point guard, also gives you some veteran experience and leadership, which could be much needed, even though you have guys like Fred VanVleet, but overall it's a very, very young team. So having a guy who's got the age factor, been there, done that, got the experience, I think can definitely, have a role on this team right now, and also just provide a bridge year. It gives a bridge year for somebody like Malachi Flynn, maybe to have a bit more reduced minutes, work his way into things, maybe take some pressure off guys like Fred VanVleet trying to run the point, or Gary Trent Jr. at the 2. So still some potential roles for Dragic, but again, I don't think he's going to end the season with the Raptors. Last and certainly not least, I think the roster fill-outs, guys like Banton, Johnson, Bonga, Decker. Some really interesting pieces here. I'm going to grade it a B-. For the roster fill-outs, I'm going to go through this section in a little bit more of sort of a general form. We'll start with the two guards, both on the bigger side in terms of Banton and Johnson. I think Banton is like 6'9" or something like that. I could be wrong. I know Johnson is 6'5", but I did watch these guys in college. I was hoping that the Raptors would pick a center at some point in the second round, but I'm not necessarily opposed to picking these two guards here. David Johnson is a guy that I'm very excited to watch. I watched a lot of Louisville for the past couple of years that he's played there, and he's a good scoring guard, another two-way player. He's good at moving the ball as well. Had, I think, just under 4 assists last season. And then the other guy that I wanted to highlight was actually Isaac Bonga. Now, I don't expect him to be in the Raptors rotation that much this year, but this is a guy who's been in the league for 3 years, only 21 years old, which, sort of gets lost sometimes when you're talking about Bonga. A big man with playmaking skills, overall fairly talented guard and forward. Again, might not get too much playing time, but an interesting pickup nonetheless, and a guy definitely to look out for if he does get some minutes in back end of games, maybe later on in the rotation, some garbage minutes as well. Make sure you keep an eye out for him. But anyways, guys, if you did make it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts, comments, and predictions down in the comment section below. If you did enjoy today's video, make sure to let me know by smashing that thumbs up button, subscribing to Touchdowns to Home Runs for more content just like this. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys again next time.